Howdy, Possum Patty here, and Little Miss Patty Opossum, the Irish gnome, is with us today because the universe has been giving me gnomes. Yes, ever since the other day when I made this journal for the troll, and Flat Stanley started clamoring that he needed a journal too. And the gnomes back there on the window shelf started hopping up and down that they wanted journals too. The universe has been giving me gnomes. We were at the antique store and there was a cabinet full of gnomes. We were down by the shopping center and there was a huge gnome and a store with shelves and shelves of gnomes. And of course, at the Dollar Tree, there were all kinds of gnomes. I have this feeling that, the gnomes are going to start multiplying and like popping up everywhere. By Easter, they may be multiplying like rabbits. We're going to have gnomes everywhere. Yeah, well, so all that inspired me to get going on the gnome journal first. I thought I would be doing Flat Stanley's journal first, but he said it's okay. He'll wait a few more days and I could get started on the gnome journal. Journaling is thirsty work, so I ran out to the kitchen to make myself a pot of tea. And today's tea is black cherry berry. And I'm going to pour myself a cup in my new uranium glows under the black light tea set. And I have something very special here. Let me move the teapot to here. I first fell in love with the gnomes back in the early 1980s. When this book came out, this is half of the dust jacket. It's a very large book about gnomes. Well, the authors of this book are Dutch. So they're from the Netherlands, and I love these gnomes. I love these illustrations. They are like my fave. And you notice the two little gnomes that I have are styled after the gnomes from the Netherlands. Well, my two little gnomes here brought me a tea time treat straight from the Netherlands. Now these are Dutch stroopwafels. And excuse me a moment there. Let me move you out of the way. I've never had these before, but they thought since I love caramel that I might like these special Dutch cookies. It says there are 8 toasted waffles filled with caramel, cinnamon, and real bourbon vanilla. And I was reading the box, and it says on the back, warm it up on your cup. How to eat a stroopwafel like the Dutch. We call it wake the waffle in 3 simple steps. You put the cookie on top of your cup of tea. You wait 2 minutes, and then the transformation is completed, and you sit back and you eat the cookie. So let me open this up. And here is the package of waffles. Can't wait to taste these. I love caramel. So we're going to put this on the cup of hot tea for 2 minutes. To wake the waffle, and then we'll give it a taste test. Oh my gosh, look at that. It fits perfect on my cup of tea. So we'll give that a moment to wake up. Well, I took a little break for some tea and some waffle. And the hot tea, the steam from the hot tea has made the top nice and soft and yummy. And that caramel filling, it is just making my mouth water. It is so good. Taking another bite, I'm sorry. I can't put it down. Oh, so good, so good. I just can't put it down. Last summer, I got 3 of these little gnome books at a book sale, and they're used, but they have the same illustrations as the really large original book, but much smaller, and I thought these would make excellent ephemera for journals because they're a little bit smaller than the illustrations in that really big book. So I took one of them, Little Gnome Facts. I love the cover on this. The woodland gnome is feeding the little mouse there. And on the back, the Papa Gnome is explaining about mushrooms to the little boy gnome there. And what I did was I took a knife and I slit the inside of the cover on the front and back there and pulled out the signatures. And then I took a pair of scissors and cut off this tiny spine because I wanted a much wider spine. Then I cut a piece of cardboard about 1 inch wide to make a new spine, and I attached it to the front and back cover with a strip of Tyvek mailing envelope. I did put a piece on the outside too. So I cut a piece for the front, and since it's just plain white Tyvek envelope, I'll probably be covering it with some material. I gotta look through my stash. And speaking of stash, I am so good at saving scraps of paper and so bad about using them up. And since this journal is not that big, maybe I will go through my scraps and find paper that will fit in here. Anything but a 12 by 12. I will not use a 12 by 12 sheet. I will not use an 8.5 by 11 sheet. I will look around and find sheets that are already cut. Now the pictures inside the journals inspired me on which papers to choose for the signatures. I love the earth tones that are in here. Look at the woods, beautiful oranges and yellows and browns, burnt siennas, and also the summer greens. So those colors inspired me on which papers to choose. So here's what I've chosen. And because I was using paper that was already cut, like scraps, all the pages are not going to be the same size. Some are going to be much smaller because that's a scrap of paper I found and I want to use. So again, I have the earth tones and sort of woodland patterns like feathers and leaves. I love the bright yellow sunflowers since there were several images in the book with the yellow flowers, light green, green patterns, light colors, and then browns and the oranges. So this is the first signature. And then the second signature, again, woodland theme, greens and browns, earth tones, oranges, the deer, because the deer were in the book too, and this is like a fawn, baby deer pattern, and then more woodland leaves. So these are the pages that I picked. But before I sew them in, I've got to put some material on the inside of the journal cover. So I gave myself another challenge. I decided that the little bits I cut off, to make these pages fit into the journal, that I would put these in a special baggie and try and use these up making this journal. So I don't have a lot of scraps because I was already using paper that was cut, but I do have scraps. And I have no idea how people use up all their scraps all the time. Because whenever I try doing that, I just wind up with more scraps. So this is not too bad. This is not too bad. And I'm going to try and use these in the journal. So I'm going to take these scraps and I'm going to put them with the inside of the book. And hopefully I'll be able to use these up as best I can. That's a new challenge of mine. So I grabbed a pile of material scraps that had sort of the earth tone woodland feel to it to see which one I wanted to put on the inside, I love this, of the journal. And I decided that I was going to go with this one with the leaves and the beautiful colors here. And I ripped a piece for the front and one for the back. So I'm going to glue these down and then I'm going to cover the spine with the brown like this. So that'll be the inside. And then I'm going to take a strip of this brown and after I sew in the signatures, I'm going to put this on the outside. Now to glue these down, usually all I do is use a glue stick. All right, I'm going to grab a new glue stick because I see that that one is almost out. And I use a lot of glue stick to put fabric down. And usually I cover this whole thing with the glue stick and I put a little bit of Fabri-Tac where the Tyvek is. Because sometimes the glue stick doesn't make things stick to the Tyvek. So that's what I'm going to do. Oops. I got a little bit left in this one and I want to use it all up. It's going to hit bottom any second now. And there it goes. Put on a little bit of beacon glue. And then I just take the material. Notice I didn't iron it. It'll be fine. When you put it down to the glue stick, just kind of iron it as you put it down. Use your finger iron there to smooth it out. And the wrinkles will go away. Beauteous. Look at that. All the wrinkles are gone. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to that cover and putting on the brown piece. I usually put down an old piece of cardboard. I get out a pokey tool and some upholstery needles. And I make a template that fits the spine with how many signatures I want in there. I'm going to do this quick. If you want a more detailed instruction about how I put together these little journals made from books, I do have a whole series on how I changed little golden books into journals, and basically it's the same thing. So I'll list that below, and you can check that out another time. So I'm just going to go ahead and poke holes and sew these signatures into the journal, and then I will be right back. And there we have it. I've got my signatures all sewn in. I used some green embroidery floss for the first signature, mostly because of a little bit of a green theme going on here. And for the last signature, I used brown because of the earth tones. And so the inside is all done. Usually my journals come out just a little bit wonky, and that makes them awesome perfect. Now what I have to do is cover the spine with some material. and then this will be ready for journaling. Now at this point, folks expect me to start filling this up with pockets and tucks and belly bands and ephemera and decorate every page. But you know what? I don't do that. I make the cover, I put in the signatures, and then I journal in it. And each page gets decorated as I journal. And it might take 2 years to fill up a journal. And I never know what's going to be on the page, so I can't decorate it ahead of time. I like to decorate every page for what I'm journaling about. So what I need to do is glue down the material I have for the front spine, the front of the spine, like that. I thought this went well with this tree over there. And then when that dries, I might do a little bit of an introductory page. I never get these things perfect, but that's okay. We're going to let that dry for a few moments, and while that's drying, let me share one more gnome sighting with you. I saved the best for last. Mr. Possum had to return a few videos to the library, and I went in with him. And you have to walk past the children's section to get to where the videos are. And, you know, they had a display rack out, and I glanced real quickly, and something caught my eye. It is a new book about gnomes, And I took it out, and I brought it home, and there were some wonderful things in here. I'm going to be doing a deep dive into this book. Yes, I am, because there is so much to this book that I want to share with you. But I want to share one thing with you today, and that is the very last page. I'm going to start with the very last page of this book today, and then, you know, as we go along in the Gnome Journal and I do some pages, I'll be sharing some more with you. Well, you know, when I fell in love with gnomes, it was because of the Dutch gnomes, and I still love the Dutch gnomes. They are my fave. But in this new book, I am learning about the Canadian gnomes, gnomes from Canada. The Hidden World of Gnomes, written by Lauren Saloy. Now, Lauren is a native of Canada. She lives in Nova Scotia, and this is her book about the gnomes. So I'm just assuming these are the Canadian gnomes, right? Because these would be the ones she would be familiar with. Now here at Soggy Bottom, we welcome all gnomes, no matter where they come from, their size, their color, their shape. We just welcome all gnomes here at Soggy Bottom. So I'm going to be welcoming in the Canadian gnomes. There's a lot in this book, and I really want to get to it, but it is way too much to share. So I'm going to start, like I said, with the very last page. And you'll know why as soon as I read this. If you ever notice frogs singing, flowers blooming, squirrels with freshly fluffed tails, or a small gathering of mushrooms, there is a very good chance you have just missed some gnomes. The truth is that gnomes and others like them are all around us, but most people don't look closely enough. They might catch a glimpse of a gnome and dismiss it as a ball of moss or a funny bird. They don't see them even when they see them. But the good news is that you have a choice. You can choose to look closely. You can choose to see the magic in the world. You can choose to believe, and your life will be infinitely richer if you do. It's all about believing in the magic. So what I have done is I took that very last page and I put it in my printer and I reduced it down 50% so it'll fit perfectly as the first page in my gnome journal. But I feel like I need to decorate the page a little bit more. And I want maybe this to be a little bit more of an artsy journal. I want to do some more drawing and sketching and painting. I love her illustrations. They are so different than the Dutch illustrations. But yet, if you look closely in these illustrations, you will find tiny, tiny details of nature on every page. And I'll be pointing those out. So I'm thinking about a leaf, right? Maybe leaves with some holes in it. I love the leaves that aren't perfect. And this little leaf has his eye peeking through the hole in this leaf. And I thought, just a simple page. I can glue this in the middle and just cut out a few little leaves, maybe from some painty papers, and paste them around. Well, you know what? Let me go ahead and put this down. And then I have to go under the table to find some painty papers and cut out some leaves. So this way I'll know how big I need to make them and how many I want to put on the first page. I've got some gel prints here. Ah, those are colorful. Those are colorful. I do have some leaf prints, but these are way too big for that page. I might save those for something else. Okay, what I'm doing is just sketching some very simple, like oak leaf shape. Trying to get different colors from these painty papers here. And then I'm going over the sketch with my Sakura glaze pen, which is like a dimensional gel pen. Because the style of art in her book, in Lauren's book, she does use some heavy black lines. And I found that very interesting. It's just a different style, it's just a different way of doing something. Now, oak leaves come in all different shapes. And this is just one kind of oak leaf. I want to get some of this wonderful grunginess up here. Or maybe over here. And I make a roundy part at the top. And then oak leaves, some of them have deep sinuses or these spaces that come in like that. Not all of them. There's all different shapes of oak leaves. They usually have a short stem. I think white oak leaves, there's different families of oak trees. The white oak trees and the red oak trees, and the red ones have points and the white ones are roundy. And then there's ones like the chestnut oak, and the leaves look like chestnut tree leaves, and there's so many different shapes of oak trees. But most of them, to me, they're just very artistic. I love oak leaves. They remind me of Matisse, the artist. Okay, I cut out a few of the little leaves, and I'm going to glue them in. Just going to use my glue stick. This just might be like a simple page. You know, like a little introduction to the story. I made an odd number of leaves. Yeah, something like that. The little gnome journal is ready. Signatures are in, and the first page, which is just dedicated to believing in the magic, is done. So I want to thank the little gnomes who gave me this special treat of the Dutch waffle cookies. Yum, yum, yum. And I want to thank the Canadian Gnomes for allowing me to use a little bit of their story here as the beginning of my gnome journal. And like I said, I will be back to show you more of this book and more journaling in the Gnome Journal. Thanks for coming along today. Happy junk journaling. Bye-bye. Do you see?